Hello and welcome to the Eleanor Stories. I'm Eleanor, and today I'm going to tell you an original story, a story about family, betrayal, and the moment when the truth finally finds its way to the surface. Let's begin. My mom's name lit up my phone on a Tuesday evening, 3 days before the holiday. I was in my kitchen with flour on my hands and a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Buy cranberries," in my own blocky handwriting. Like if I planned hard enough, if I prepared the right food and brought the right kind of quiet energy, I could earn my way into being included. The apartment smelled like butter and cornmeal. I'd been testing cornbread recipes, the kind with a crisp edge and a soft center, because that's what my dad always liked. I told myself I was making it because I enjoyed it, that I was building a tradition for myself. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I was still trying. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered with a soft smile I didn't even realize I'd practiced. "Hey, Mom." There was no greeting back, no warmth. No, "Hi, honey," the way she used to talk to Kaylee, like she was a candle flame my mom's hands had to protect from every draft. Just a clean inhale, a measured pause, and then my name, flat, clipped, like a label on a file folder. "Megan." My stomach tightened instantly. That tone was a weather warning. I could feel my shoulders rise without permission, my body bracing the way it always did when she sounded like that. 32 years old, self-supporting, bills paid, life steady, and my nervous system still turned 12 the second she spoke with that particular edge. "Yeah?" I said, keeping my voice calm. I could already sense where this was going. I just didn't know how blunt she'd be this time. Another pause. Not the kind where someone is choosing words carefully because they're afraid of hurting you. The kind where someone already decided and is waiting for you to accept it without making them uncomfortable. "Don't come," she said. 2 words, no ramp up, no softening, like shutting a car door. I blinked. I was still holding the phone to my ear, still smelling the cornbread batter, still hearing the faint buzz of my fridge. For a second, my brain refused to process it, like it was a sentence in a foreign language, and I needed it repeated slower. "What?" "Don't come for the holiday," she repeated, as if I were slow. "It's better this year." Better. Like I was a storm they could avoid by closing the windows. My throat went tight. Better for who? A small exhale, like she didn't have time for this. Then she said the reason, the same old line that always sounded like a reasonable explanation to anyone who didn't live inside it. "Kaylee doesn't want any stress." There it was, the old wound reopened with the same dull blade. I stared at the fridge, at the grocery list. Eggs, cranberries, wine for Aunt Lori. Like I'd still been invited into a picture that had already been cropped. "Stress?" I repeated quietly. "I haven't even talked to Kaylee in months." "And we want to keep it that way," my mom said, sharper now, like my existence had a volume knob she was turning down. "You know how she gets when things aren't peaceful." Peaceful. That word used to mean the whole family laughing in the living room, the house smelling like cinnamon and roast and pine. Now it meant something else. It meant Kaylee's moods controlled the climate. It meant everyone moved around her like she was a sleeping baby. No loud noises, no sudden movements, no uncomfortable truths. "You mean when things aren't centered on her?" I said. "Megan." My mom warned my name, stretched it into a scold, like she could still discipline me through a phone line. I leaned my hip against the counter. The stone was cool through my jeans, grounding me. I let myself look at the bowl of batter beside me, the spoon resting on the rim. I'd been stirring something warm into existence while my family was busy deciding I was the problem. "I already booked the flight," I said. "I already requested the time off. Cancel it. No hesitation. Or don't. That's your choice. But you're not coming here." The finality in her voice hit me like a shove. My face stayed neutral because I'd learned how to keep my expression calm even when something inside me cracked. "So everyone's coming," I said evenly. "But me." "It's not like that," she snapped, which was always the line right before she did exactly what it was like. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't do the old dance where I tried to convince her I was harmless, good, safe, worthy. I just waited because I wanted to hear how she justified it this time. I wanted to hear the script, the careful phrasing she used to make cruelty sound like logistics. "She's had a hard few weeks," my mom continued, "and we're not doing anything that might set her off. Your father agrees." Of course he did. My dad always agreed the way wallpaper agrees with a room. Present, silent, chosen by someone else. He'd made an entire personality out of not taking a side, which always meant the side with more power won. "Does she know you called me?" I asked. "She doesn't need to," my mom said. "And Megan, don't start. Please don't make it about you. Don't make it about you." The phrase was familiar enough to taste, like pennies, like old metal, like something bitter you can't spit out in front of polite company. I looked out my small kitchen window at the parking lot below. A couple walked a dog in matching puffer jackets. The dog's tail wagged like it had never been told it was too much. I swallowed. I'm not making it about me. I'm trying to understand why I'm the only one being asked to stay away. "You know why," she said. "We've been over this." Have we? We'd been over my place in this family. That was what she meant. There was a scraping sound on her end of the call, like she was moving a chair. I pictured her in the dining room of my childhood home, the one with the heavy oak table. I pictured the way she'd tilt her chin up when she decided she was being reasonable. I could almost see her expression, patient, tired, like I was a problem she had to manage instead of a daughter she had to love. "Megan," she said again, softer this time, like she was trying on a kinder voice. "This is just how it needs to be. For now. For now." The phrase that promised temporary while delivering permanent. "Is Kaylee even asking for this?" I asked. A pause. Then, "Kaylee needs stability." That didn't answer my question. "Mom," I said, and I surprised myself with how steady my voice was. "Do you hear yourself?" "What I hear," she snapped, "is you pushing when I'm telling you the situation. Why can't you just accept it? Why do you always have to create tension?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so predictable it bordered on surreal. Me, creating tension by existing. "I'm not creating anything," I said. "I'm reacting to being told not to come home." "It's not being told not to come home. It's not home when you don't live here," she said, and the words were casual, like she was stating a fact about weather. But they landed with the kind of precision that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. My fingers tightened around the phone. I stared down at my counter, where a plane itinerary was pinned under a jar of sugar. I'd printed it out like a hopeful idiot, like this was still a normal thing people did, like I could hold the proof of my invitation in my hands and it would make it real. "I thought we were okay," I said quietly. "We are okay," she said. And that was the part that always made me feel crazy. She could slice me out and still call it peace. You're the one making it heavy. My heart beat hard once, like it was trying to punch its way out of my ribs. I'd promised myself I wouldn't do it. I'd promised myself I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't list the reasons I wasn't a threat. I wouldn't shrink myself into a version that fit better. But I couldn't stop the words from coming, because some part of me still wanted her to see me. I can keep my distance, I said. I can stay in a hotel. I can come for dinner and leave early. I can... No, she cut in. Megan, no. We are not doing this bargaining thing. We're not negotiating around Kaylee's needs. Kaylee's needs. The way my mom said it, it sounded like Kaylee was a fragile medical condition, instead of a grown woman who knew exactly how to press her thumb into every bruise in our family and make it look like I caused the pain. I took a slow breath through my nose. The air smelled like warm butter and sweet corn. It was ridiculous that my kitchen felt safer than my childhood home ever had. What about my needs? I asked, and I hated myself a little for even phrasing it that way, like love was a resource to be rationed. My mom made a noise that could have been a sigh or a scoff. Megan, please, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't ask. Don't want. Don't take up space. Don't make your feelings everyone else's problem. I watched my own reflection in the black screen of the microwave door. My face looked calm. My eyes didn't. I looked like someone listening to a verdict. Okay, I said. The word came out even, almost gentle. There was a beat of silence, like my mom was waiting for the second half. The argument, the tears, the guilt. The tantrum she could point to later and say, see, this is why Kaylee can't handle her. When none came, my mom exhaled, the tension draining out of her voice the way it did when she felt she'd regained control. Good, she said. Thank you for understanding. Understanding, like I was doing her a favor by letting her reject me. And Megan, she added, a little brighter now, like she'd already moved on. Don't text Kaylee. I don't want her upset. I stared at the batter bowl, at the spoon, at the cornbread recipe card I'd written out in neat handwriting because I'd imagined handing it to my aunt or my cousin, like I was part of the group again. I wasn't going to, I said. Good, my mom said again. Happy holiday. It sounded like an afterthought, like something a customer service rep says at the end of a call they don't care about. Then she hung up. No, I love you. No, we'll miss you. No softness. No regret. Just a dead line and the quiet hum of my refrigerator. I stood there holding the phone for a second longer than necessary because my body didn't know what to do when the rejection was that clean. My hands started to shake, just once, a small tremor in my fingers that I stopped by placing the phone face down on the counter, like I was putting a lid on something dangerous. I stared at it, half expecting it to ring again with a correction. I'm sorry, sweetheart, that came out wrong. Of course you can come. Of course you belong. But it didn't ring. I walked to the fridge and stared at my grocery list like it was evidence in a trial. Eggs, cranberries, wine, aluminum foil, bring cornbread. I reached up and peeled the list off the magnet. The paper made a soft, tearing sound where it had been stuck too long. I held it between my fingers and waited for the familiar rush of humiliation. It came anyway. Not as a wave, but as a slow heat in my face, a tightness behind my eyes. The ache of wanting something you're not allowed to have. I remembered other holidays, standing in my childhood hallway with my coat on, watching Kaylee float through the living room like she was the guest of honor, like the whole house had been built around her. I remembered the way my mom's eyes followed Kaylee's every move, the way my dad's jokes got louder when Kaylee laughed, the way my existence always seemed to create an inconvenience someone else had to solve. And I remembered myself, always adjusting, always watching, always calculating how to be less. I didn't crumple the list. I didn't rip it up dramatically. I just folded it in half, slowly, and placed it in the trash. Then I stood there, staring at it, like I needed my body to witness the choice. Because if I wasn't wanted at their table, I wasn't going to keep shopping for a seat. My kitchen felt too quiet, so I turned on the faucet and let the water run, just to have a sound that wasn't my own thoughts. I rinsed the flour off my hands. The water was warm. My skin turned pink. I scrubbed like I could wash off the part of me that still hoped. On the counter, my phone stayed face down, dark and innocent, like it hadn't just delivered a sentence that would follow me into sleep. I looked around my apartment, small but clean, my own furniture, my own colors. A framed photo of me and my best friend Nora at a hike last summer, both of us windburned and laughing. A stack of mail, a throw blanket on the couch, evidence of a life I built without their permission. And still, my chest hurt like someone had taken something from me. Not because I needed them to survive, because I needed them to stop making love feel like something I had to earn. I walked back to the batter bowl and stared at it. Dad liked cornbread, but Dad had agreed. The thought landed hard and stayed there. I lifted the spoon, stirred once, then set it back down. My appetite was gone. I went into my bedroom and opened the closet. My suitcase sat on the top shelf, half buried behind winter coats. I pulled it down and set it on the bed. For a second, I just looked at it. 5 years ago, I would have begged. I would have called my dad, my aunt, my cousin, anyone who might intervene. I would have drafted careful texts. I would have apologized for things I didn't do. I would have promised to be easy. This time, I didn't reach for my phone. I sat on the edge of my bed and let the quiet settle. And in that quiet, a different thought rose up, small, steady, not dramatic. If they could say, "Don't come," this easily, then maybe I could stop trying to return to a place that didn't want me. I didn't decide anything loud. I didn't declare anything heroic. I just sat there, breathing, feeling the old role slide off my shoulders like a coat that never fit right. Then I closed the suitcase without opening it. Not yet, but soon. Because something in me had finally started to understand. Being excluded wasn't an accident. It was a system. And systems don't change because you bring better cornbread. They change when you stop showing up to be erased. I wish I could tell you that phone call shocked me, that it was a new kind of cruelty. But the truth is, my mom didn't invent that coldness on Tuesday. She just used it in its purest form. No frosting. No maybe next time. No fake apology to make herself feel like a decent person. Because my whole life, the family rule book was simple. Kaylee was the sun. Everyone else, especially me, was supposed to orbit quietly. When I was a kid, I didn't have language for it. I only knew that when Kaylee laughed, the room got brighter. When she pouted, the air changed. And when I spoke too loudly or asked for something I needed, my mom's eyes would narrow like I'd committed some kind of offense. "Be easy," she'd say, as if I was born difficult. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I got angry, I was starting things. If I asked why, I was making it about me. And Kaylee could do almost anything and still be sensitive, overwhelmed, going through a lot, just stressed. It didn't matter that she was the one who threw stones and hid her hands. It didn't matter that she knew how to twist a story until she wore the victim's face like a mask. My mom always responded the same way. Protect Kaylee, correct Megan. I can count the moments it became undeniable. They're lodged in my memory like little shards. Not because I'm trying to hold a grudge, but because I learned early that if I didn't remember what happened, my family would rewrite it. One of the first times I felt it in my bones was 5th grade. We had a young author's night. Kids sat at folding tables in the school library with stapled booklets we'd made ourselves. Mine was a mystery story with hand-drawn illustrations. I'd worked on it for weeks, coloring the pictures with the cheap markers that dried out if you left the cap off for 10 seconds. I even stayed up late the night before, rewriting my ending because I wanted it to be good. My teacher had told me, "Megan, you have a real voice." I didn't even know what that meant, but I liked the way it sounded. Like maybe I had something that belonged to me. My mom said she'd come. She promised. My dad said he'd try, which was his version of yes. That afternoon, I sat at my table with my booklet in front of me, twisting my fingers together, scanning the library doors every time they opened. Parents filed in with cameras. Little kids bounced in their seats. The librarian handed out cookies on paper plates. Then I saw my mom. She came in fast, like she was late for a flight. She didn't look at my table first. She didn't even scan the room for me. Her eyes went straight to Kaylee, who had a table near the front because her teacher always put her in the spotlight. Kaylee was doing a poetry reading. She'd scribbled a few lines about friendship and glitter gel pens. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't the only thing happening. My mom hurried to her like Kaylee was the only child in the building. I stood up halfway. I lifted a hand. I opened my mouth to call her name. Then my mom glanced at me, just once, then flicked her eyes away as if acknowledging me would be rude to Kaylee. After Kaylee finished reading, my mom wrapped her in a hug and said, loud enough for the parents around them to hear, "That was beautiful, baby. You're so gifted." Kaylee turned and saw me standing there, her mouth tilted, not a smile. Something sharper. Then she said, "Mom, can we go? This is boring." And my mom, without even checking the time, without even asking me how my night was going, said, "Of course, sweetheart." I followed them out of the library like a ghost. My booklet stayed on the table. My teacher waved at me, confused. I didn't wave back because my throat was full of something hot and humiliating. In the car, I said, "You didn't even look at mine." My mom sighed like I'd complained about the wrong restaurant. "Megan, stop being dramatic," she said. "Kaylee was nervous. She needed me." Needed. The word that always meant more than you. In middle school, it got worse because Kaylee discovered something powerful. She could push and pull attention with her emotions. She could provoke me and then cry when I reacted. She could lie in a way that sounded innocent if you wanted to believe it. There was a Saturday when I'd been invited to a friend's birthday party. It was one of the first times I'd felt like I had a life outside my house. I'd picked out a sweater I loved, a soft green one that made my eyes look brighter. I'd even curled my hair a little, standing on my toes in front of the bathroom mirror. Kaylee came in while I was putting on mascara. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Going to Jenna's party," I said. She leaned against the door frame, watching me like she was judging a product review. "You're trying too hard." I ignored her. I'd learned that responding was like feeding a stray cat. Once you did it, it kept coming back. Then she reached over and flicked the corner of my makeup bag. My mascara rolled off the counter and cracked when it hit the tile. "Oops," she said, dead-eyed. I turned, furious. "What is wrong with you?" She blinked, slow and innocent. "I didn't do anything." "Yes, you did." She raised her voice just a notch. "Mom! Megan's yelling at me!" Like clockwork, my mom appeared, already irritated, hair half done, robe tied tight, face pinched in that familiar expression that said, "I don't have time for your feelings." "What now?" she demanded. Kaylee's eyes filled instantly. It would have been impressive if it hadn't ruined my life so often. "She's being mean," Kaylee said. "She said I'm pathetic." I stared at her. "I didn't say that." My mom's eyes snapped to me. "Megan, why would you say something like that?" "I didn't," I insisted. "She knocked my mascara off on purpose. Stop," my mom cut in. "Stop making everything a fight." "She's lying," I said. My voice shook, and I hated that it did because my mom always treated my emotion like proof of guilt. My mom's mouth tightened. "Kaylee is upset." "Can you not see that?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake my mom and make her look at what was right in front of her. But I didn't. I swallowed it, because screaming never made me believable in that house. "I just want to go," I said, quieter. My mom pointed a finger at me like a judge. "Then go," she said. "And when you come back, you're apologizing to your sister for your attitude." I didn't go to that party. Not because my mom forbade it. Because I sat on my bed with my cracked mascara and my green sweater and realized I couldn't walk into a room full of laughing kids with that kind of rage humming under my skin. The worst part wasn't Kaylee's lie. The worst part was how normal it was for my mom to believe her. By high school, I learned the real family currency wasn't love. It was performance. Kaylee performed fragility. My mom performed fairness. My dad performed neutrality. And I performed being fine. There was a night junior year when I got my first award, a scholarship for a summer program. It wasn't huge, but it mattered to me. It was proof that I wasn't invisible everywhere. They announced my name in the auditorium. I walked across the stage with my cheeks burning, accepting an envelope with my hands trembling. Afterward, I found my parents near the exit. My mom smiled politely, the way you smile at a coworker's kid. "That's nice, Megan," she said. "Nice." Then Kaylee appeared behind her, sulking, arms crossed. "She didn't get anything," Kaylee muttered. My mom's attention snapped to her like a magnet. "Oh, honey," she said, voice softening immediately. "You'll have your moment too." Kaylee's eyes slid to me. "It's just not fair," she said loudly, like she wanted someone to hear it. "Everyone acts like Megan's so special." I waited. I waited for my mom to correct her. To say, "Kaylee, that's unkind." To say, "Megan worked hard." To say anything that resembled defense. Instead, my mom turned to me and hissed, "Don't gloat." I stared at her. "I'm not." "Then don't stand there looking smug," she snapped. Smug. I just won something for myself, and somehow my face was still the problem. I didn't tell my mom when I got into college. Not right away. I told a friend first. I told my guidance counselor. I told my English teacher. I sat in my car afterward and cried with relief, because the future finally felt like a door I could open. When I eventually told my parents, my mom nodded like she was checking off a chore list. "Good," she said. "Just don't make it a big deal. Your sister's still figuring things out." Kaylee figuring things out became the excuse for everything. My achievements got minimized so Kaylee wouldn't feel bad. My milestones got softened so Kaylee wouldn't feel left behind. My joy got edited until it was palatable for her. Even as adults, it didn't change. When I got my first real job after college, I called my mom from my tiny apartment, sitting on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet. I was so proud I could barely breathe. "I got it," I said. "I got the position, full-time, benefits. Mom, I did it." My mom's voice was distracted. I could hear TV noise in the background. "That's good," she said. "Hey, hold on a second. Kaylee's asking me something." Then I listened to her talk to my sister for 3 full minutes about a guy Kaylee had met at a bar. 3 minutes of laughter and interest and questions. When my mom came back, she sounded like she'd forgotten I was still there. "What were you saying?" she asked. I swallowed the humiliation and said, "Never mind." And she said, "Okay," like she was relieved. There was another time, late 20s, when Kaylee borrowed money from me, a short-term thing. She promised she'd pay me back in 2 weeks. She even put it in writing in a text message, like that made it more real. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. When I asked, gently, for the money back, Kaylee exploded. "You always think you're better than me," she snapped over the phone. "You're obsessed with control." "I'm not controlling you," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just need what you promised." She laughed, sharp and cruel. "Wow, you're really going to be like this? Over money?" Over money. As if I hadn't spent years being easy, being understanding, being the one who didn't cause problems. My mom called me that night. "Megan," she said, already irritated, "why are you stressing your sister out?" I shut my eyes. I could almost recite the script with her. "She owes me $2,000, I said. "I asked her for it back." "She said you were attacking her," my mom replied. "Of course she did." My mom's voice hardened. "Megan, if you're going to be petty, you can handle your own consequences." Petty. $2,000 was rent. It was groceries. It was a car repair. It was the difference between stability and stress. My stress, the kind that didn't matter. And the most insane part? My mom didn't ask Kaylee to pay me back. She asked me to stop making it a thing. Every version of the story ended the same way. Kaylee acted, my mom protected, and I got told to shrink. So when my mom said, "Don't come," it wasn't a surprise. It was a summary. It was every moment my feelings were inconvenient. Every time my presence was treated like a threat to Kaylee's comfort. Every time I was told my job was to keep things smooth, even if it meant sanding myself down until I barely existed. Standing in my bedroom that night, staring at my unopened suitcase, I realized something that made my stomach twist in a different way. It wasn't just that my mom favored Kaylee. It was that my mom had built our whole family around the idea that Kaylee's peace mattered more than my belonging. And I had spent years trying to earn a place in a structure designed to keep me out. By the time I went back to my kitchen, the cornbread batter had started to settle. The surface looked thicker, heavier, like it had been left too long. I stared at it and thought, this is what happens when you keep waiting for someone who never shows up. Things change. They harden. They become something else. I didn't throw it out. Not yet. I just covered the bowl with plastic wrap and put it in the fridge, like I was postponing a decision. Like I was postponing the truth. Was useful. I didn't call my mom back. Was useful. I didn't call my mom back. That might sound like a small thing, but in my family, it was practically a felony. Silence was treated like disrespect. Boundaries were treated like betrayal. And for most of my life, the version of me they liked best was the version that always responded, always explained, always softened, always apologized first, so no one else had to. So when I didn't call her back after "don't come," I felt two things at the same time: relief and terror. Relief because I didn't have to perform the usual humiliation, begging to be included, bargaining down my own presence until it was almost nothing. Terror because I knew what came next: the narrative. The group chat. The passive-aggressive checking-in messages that were really just probes to see if I was still trainable. I washed the dishes that night like I was scrubbing a crime scene. I wiped down counters that were already clean. I folded laundry that didn't need folding. Anything to keep my hands moving while my mind tried to sprint backward into the old script. Call her, fix it, say the right words. If you just explain it better, she'll understand. If you sound calm enough, she'll listen. If you don't cry, you'll be taken seriously. That was always my delusion, that the problem was my delivery. That if I could just present my pain in a prettier package, my family would finally accept it as real. But by 32, after enough holidays eaten alone, after enough phone calls ended mid-sentence, after enough conversations where I walked away feeling like I'd been gently erased, I'd started to learn a different kind of survival. Not the kind where you toughen up so nothing hurts. The kind where you stop handing people the knife. It didn't happen overnight. It happened in small, unglamorous decisions that looked like nothing from the outside. Like not returning a call immediately. Like letting a text sit unanswered when it was clearly bait. Like saying, "I'm not discussing that," and meaning it. The first time I tried it, years earlier, my entire body reacted like I'd stepped into traffic. It was after a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, one of those meals where everything looked warm and normal on the table, but the air felt like it was full of invisible tripwires. Kaylee had spent the whole night making little comments under her breath. "Oh, Megan's still doing that job?" she'd said, like my career was a phase. "Oh, Megan's being healthy now," she'd said when I passed on dessert, like I was trying to shame everyone else by having a boundary around sugar. Then, when I finally snapped, just one sharp line, one exhausted, "Can you stop?" Kaylee's eyes went shiny, and suddenly I was the villain for raising my voice. On the drive home, my mom called me and said, "You need to apologize. You can't keep attacking your sister." That night, I stared at my phone until my screen went dark, and I didn't call her back. I remember the physical feeling of it, my heart banging, my palms sweating, my throat closing like I was waiting for punishment. My brain kept insisting I was doing something wrong. I kept imagining my mom's angry face, my dad's disappointed silence, Kaylee's smug satisfaction. But nothing exploded. No one came pounding on my door, no lightning struck. The world didn't end because I didn't perform. And that was the first crack in the old belief system. It taught me something I didn't want to admit. Their power over me had always depended on my participation. My family was like a play that had been running for decades. When I stopped pleading, the whole million people pleading, the present with many plating this changes. When I stopped pleading, the whole 100 million squabbled. So I started practicing new habits, quiet ones that didn't look dramatic enough for anyone to accuse me of causing problems, but solid enough to hold my life in place. I stopped explaining myself. That was the big one. I didn't send paragraphs trying to justify why I felt hurt. I didn't list evidence. I didn't write essays in the Notes app and then edit them down to something reasonable. I didn't do that thing where I rehearsed a conversation in my head 15 times so I could sound unbothered while my insides screamed. I used shorter sentences. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I'm not coming. At first, those sentences felt like I was speaking a language I wasn't fluent in. They sounded rude in my own mouth because I'd been trained to believe my needs were automatically rude. But I kept using them anyway, like building muscle. I also stopped waiting for permission to build a life. I paid off my credit cards. I got serious about my budget. I set up automatic savings, even if it was only $50 a paycheck at first. I found a therapist who didn't flinch when I described my family dynamics, who didn't tell me to be the bigger person or just forgive for your own peace, but instead asked, "What do you want your life to feel like?" That question hit me harder than any insult my sister ever tossed at me. Because I realized I'd spent so much time trying to win a role in my family that I'd never stopped to ask what kind of life I actually wanted. I wanted steadiness. I wanted mornings where my stomach wasn't tight before I checked my phone. I wanted friendships that didn't require me to shrink. I wanted love that didn't feel like an audition. So I built it, piece by piece. I found support outside my family, even though it embarrassed me at first, like needing people made me weak. My best friend Nora became the person I texted when I was proud of something. Not my mom, not my dad. Nora. She celebrated my wins like they were normal. She didn't search for ways to minimize them to protect someone else's ego. My coworker Janelle, who started as just someone I ate lunch with, became the person who noticed when I was off. She didn't interrogate me. She'd just slide a coffee across the table and say, "Talk to me." And little by little, I got used to being treated like my feelings mattered. It was almost disorienting, like walking into a warm room after living in a drafty house for years. At first, you don't trust it. You keep waiting for the cold to come back. But warmth can retrain you. So can stability. I created routines that didn't revolve around my family's approval. Sunday grocery runs, Wednesday evening gym classes, monthly dinners with friends. I started hosting small things, game nights, potlucks, because something in me wanted to prove I could create my own version of home. And every time my mom tried to pull me back into the old role, every time she sent a message like, "Kaylee's having a hard time, can you just..." I practiced not stepping into the trap. She feels better. And I left it there. At that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of pain and hurt. I had been trying to protect myself from feeling anything at all. But I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. So I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I need to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. I hope you understand." And I left it there. At that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of pain and hurt. I had been trying to protect myself from feeling anything at all. But I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. So I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I need to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. I hope you understand." And I left it there. At that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of pain and hurt. I had been trying to protect myself from feeling anything at all. But I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. So I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I need to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. I hope you understand." And I left it there. At that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of pain and hurt. I had been trying to protect myself from feeling anything at all. But I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. So I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I need to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. I hope you understand." And I left it there. At that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of pain and hurt. I had been trying to protect myself from feeling anything at all. But I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. So I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I need to let go of the pain and hurt and move on with my life. I hope you understand." And I left it there. At that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of pain and hurt. I had been trying to protect myself from feeling anything at all. But I couldn't do that anymore. She feels better. And I left it there. At first, that drove them insane. My mom would push, "So you're not going to apologize?" And I'd say, "I'm not discussing this." My dad would send a thumbs-up emoji like he was neutral and supportive at the same time, which somehow made me want to throw my phone across the room. Kaylee would go quiet, strategic quiet, and then pop back up weeks later with a casual text like nothing happened. "Hey, what are you doing for the holiday?" And for years I'd answer. For years I'd pretend the past wasn't a pile of bruises. But slowly, I stopped. Not because I hated them, because I was tired of feeling like the extra daughter, useful when they needed someone to absorb Kaylee's emotions, disposable when Kaylee wanted the spotlight. The mindset shift wasn't inspirational. It was practical. I stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" And I started asking, "What do I need, and how do I give it to myself?" If I needed comfort, I called Nora. If I needed reassurance, I talked to my therapist. If I needed closure, I journaled what I wished I could say, and then I didn't send it. If I needed a holiday that didn't end with me crying in my car, I planned something else. I bought my own flowers. I cooked meals I actually liked. I traveled. I took myself to movies on opening night. I learned how to be alone without it feeling like punishment. And that's the part people don't always understand about healing from a family like mine. It isn't one big dramatic confrontation where you finally say the perfect thing and everyone claps and changes. It's a series of quiet refusals. It's the moment you don't rush to respond to cruelty. It's the moment you choose peace over proving your pain. It's the moment you realize you've been fighting for a seat at a table that was never built for you, and you stop asking. So after my mom's "don't come," I didn't spiral into begging. I did have a moment, though. Late that night, I sat on my couch with a blanket over my legs and my laptop open, looking at my flight confirmation. My cursor hovered over "cancel reservation." My finger trembled on the trackpad. Not because I couldn't afford to lose the money. Because canceling felt like accepting the role. It felt like signing my name under their version of the story. Megan doesn't come because she's difficult. Megan stays away because she causes stress. Megan understands she's the problem. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I did something else. I opened a new tab and searched for hotels in Portland. Not my hometown, not their street. Not their house where my bedroom had turned into a storage room the second I left, as if my presence could be boxed up and put away. Portland, a different city, a different set of streets, a different version of the holiday. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do there yet. I just knew I wasn't going to spend the day sitting in my apartment listening to other people's laughter on social media while my family pretended I didn't exist. If they didn't want me, fine. But I wasn't going to treat myself like an afterthought anymore. I wasn't going to wait for a late invitation, a pity call, a maybe next year. I clicked book. Hotel confirmation. Clean and simple. Then I canceled my flight to my parents' city, not with anger, not with a dramatic sigh, just with a quiet finality that felt like closing a door from the inside. Afterward, I sat very still. My chest felt tight, but underneath that tightness was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time when it came to my family. Control. Not the controlling kind Kaylee accused me of. The healthy kind. The kind where my choices belong to me. I went into the kitchen and took the plastic wrap off the cornbread batter. I stared at it a second, then poured it into a baking dish. The oven light glowed warm as it preheated. The cornbread came out, golden, and the cornbread came out, golden and steaming. I cut myself a piece and ate it standing at the counter. It tasted good. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Because I'd made a decision that didn't revolve around being chosen. If I wasn't wanted, I would stop asking for a seat. I would build my own table. Portland greeted me like it didn't know my family existed. That sounds dramatic, but it was the first thing I noticed when I stepped out of the rideshare near my hotel. The air had this damp, cedar-clean smell, like rain had just finished speaking. The streetlights turned the wet pavement into a ribbon of melted gold. People moved in little clusters under umbrellas, laughing, bumping shoulders, living their lives without needing permission. No one here knew I was too much. No one here knew I was stress. I checked into a modest boutique hotel tucked between a bookstore and a ramen place. The lobby was warm and smelled like coffee and oranges. A real fireplace flickered behind glass, and the woman at the front desk wore a chunky sweater and smiled like her face hadn't been trained to choose sides. "First time in Portland?" she asked while she typed. "Yeah," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Gotten me labeled unstable back home. Gotten me labeled unstable back home. In my room, I set my bag on the bed and stood there for a minute, listening to the quiet. Not the lonely kind of quiet, the neutral kind. The kind that doesn't accuse you of being ungrateful. My phone buzzed once, a message from my mom. "Hope you understand. Love you." 3 words. Then 2 more, thrown together like a bandage slapped over a wound she caused. I stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar urge to respond, the instinct to smooth it over, to say, "It's okay," when it wasn't. But the urge didn't come the way it used to. Instead, I felt tired, like I'd outgrown the whole ritual. I set my phone face down on the nightstand and left it there. On the holiday morning, I woke up early without an alarm. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window like someone knocking politely. The sky was a soft gray, not sad, just gentle, like the day had decided not to shout. I got dressed slowly, like I wasn't rushing toward anything that could hurt me. Black jeans, boots, a green sweater that made my eyes look brighter. The same color I'd worn to that middle school party I never went to. A petty part of me liked that. Cereal for a sleepy kid. Nobody looked at cereal for a sleepy kid. Nobody looked at me with that familiar, "Why are you alone?" pity. They just let me exist. I ate a croissant and drank coffee and told myself I would not spend today staring at my phone, imagining the sound of my family's house without me. I would not haunt my own life. so I went outside. Portland felt alive in a way my hometown never did on holidays. Back home, holidays were locked doors and closed curtains, families huddled inside like private clubs. Here, the city still breathed. The streets weren't empty. They were softened. People moved slower, but they still moved. I walked with my hands in my coat pockets, letting the rain mist my hair. I passed murals painted on brick walls, bright colors, bold shapes, messages about community and survival and joy. Corner, I saw a small cafe with steamed-up windows. And then, around the corner, I saw a small cafe with steamed-up windows and a chalkboard sign that said, "Holiday open. Come in if you need warmth." Under it, in smaller letters, "No questions." I stopped. Something in my chest tightened, and not in the bad way, in the recognized way. Like my body understood that invitation before my brain could. Inside, the cafe was dim and golden. Edison bulbs hung from the ceiling, plants draped from shelves. The air smelled like cinnamon, espresso, and toasted bread. There were maybe 15 people scattered around, most of them alone or in pairs, sitting with books or laptops or just staring into mugs like they were listening to their own thoughts. There was a long communal table near the back made of rough wood, nicked and imperfect in a way that felt honest. I ordered a latte and a slice of something that looked like banana bread but had chocolate folded into it. The barista had a nose ring and kind eyes. When I paid, she didn't give me that bright retail smile. She looked at me like a person. "Glad you're here," she said simply. My throat tightened again. I nodded like I wasn't affected, like my eyes weren't suddenly too hot. I sat at the communal table because I didn't want to hide in a corner. I didn't want to spend the day pretending I didn't need people. Across from me sat a woman with silver hair pulled into a bun. She was knitting something deep blue, her needles clicking softly. Next to her, a guy about my age was reading a thick paperback with a cracked spine. Further down, a younger person with curly hair was sketching in a notebook, the page filled with fast lines and shaded shapes. No one made it weird that I chose the big table alone. For 10 minutes, we all existed together in quiet, like a small, unspoken agreement. This is a safe room. Then the silver-haired woman looked up from her knitting and smiled at me. "Banana bread?" she asked, nodding at my plate. "Something like that," I said. She chuckled. "I come here every holiday. They always do one baked thing that tastes like a hug." I surprised myself by smiling back. "Is that why you come?" Her eyes softened. Partly because holidays can be complicated." There it was, the word that covered so many bruises without exposing them. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Complicated." She set her knitting down for a moment. "I'm Ruth," she said. "You?" "Megan. Nice to meet you, Megan." She said it like my name deserved space. The guy with the book looked up. "This place is basically a sanctuary," he said, joining in without forcing it. His voice was gentle, not performative. "I'm Mateo." "Megan," I repeated. The curly-haired person glanced up from their sketchbook and offered a small wave. "I'm Ren." 3 strangers, 3 names, 3 people who didn't flinch at my presence. Ruth gestured toward the big table. "We sort of adopt whoever sits here," she said. "No pressure. But if you want company, you've got it." My chest did that thing again, the tight, tender pull of almost crying. I looked down at my latte foam, at the little leaf pattern the barista had made. It was so stupid that a leaf in milk could make me feel seen. But it did. because it meant someone took a second to make something nice for me with no expectation of repayment. No pressure was a language my family never spoke. I'd like company, I admitted. Matteo smiled like he approved of honesty. Cool. Tell us, are you local? No, I said. I'm here because I didn't want to go home. The words were out before I could polish them. No pretty explanation, no careful softening. Ruth didn't gasp. She didn't say, "But it's the holidays." She didn't insist I'd regret it. She didn't make me defend my choice. She just nodded like she understood in her bones. "Then I'm really glad you found us," she said. Wren tapped their pencil against the notebook. Same, they said, quiet but sincere. Being alone on a holiday is loud. I let out a breath. Yeah, I said. It's like the silence has teeth. Matteo grimaced in recognition. That is accurate. We talked in small pieces at first, safe topics, Portland weather, favorite coffee orders, the best bookstores in town. Ruth told me she used to teach middle school art and retired last year. Matteo worked in IT, but wrote music on the side. Wren was finishing a graphic design program and was working on a comic. At some point, the cafe owner brought out a tray of tiny sugar cookies shaped like leaves and set them on the communal table with a smile. Happy holiday, table people, she said. Ruth beamed at her. Happy holiday, she replied, and it sounded like it meant, I'm glad you're alive. We ate cookies and laughed about how all families have that one relative who brings a casserole no one eats. I kept expecting the conversation to shift into something sharp, something competitive, the way it always did with Kaylee, like even joy had to be negotiated. But it didn't. No one tried to win. No one tried to prove they were more wounded, more deserving, more important. They just shared space. At one point, Matteo glanced at my hands. You do anything creative? He asked. I almost said no out of habit. Like making things that feel like home. Like making things that feel like home. Ruth's eyes warmed. That's a beautiful skill, she said. A real one. I swallowed, because my mom had never said that. Not about anything I did. Wren leaned forward. If you're here for a few days, there's a community dinner tonight at the rec center down the street, they said. It's open to anyone. Volunteers, music, people bring dishes. It's actually kind of great. My instinct was to refuse, to say I didn't want to intrude, to shrink back into solitude because it was safer than risking rejection. But then I looked at Ruth's kind face, Matteo's calm smile, the way Wren didn't seem like they were offering charity, just inclusion. And I realized something that made my stomach twist with grief. I didn't know how to accept kindness without paying for it. I forced myself to say, that sounds nice. It is, Ruth said, and you should come. We all go. Matteo lifted his mug like a toast. We can walk together. The word together landed softly and still managed to knock something loose inside me. So that evening, I put on my coat and met them outside the cafe. The rain had eased into mist. The street smelled like wet leaves. Ruth wore a bright scarf. Matteo had a beanie pulled low. Wren carried a tote bag full of something lumpy wrapped in foil. What's that? I asked. Cornbread, Wren said, grinning. I stopped walking for half a second. Seriously? Wren shrugged. I baked it this morning. My neighbor taught me. Why? My throat went tight again, ridiculous and painful. Nothing, I said quickly. It's just, I bake cornbread too. Mateo laughed. Cornbread people, he declared. This is destiny. And I laughed with them, real laughter, the kind that didn't feel like I was auditioning. The rec center was bright and loud in a soft way, kids running, older people chatting, someone tuning a guitar near a makeshift stage. The smell of food hit me the second we walked in. Roasted vegetables, turkey, gravy, garlic, sweet rolls. There were long folding tables with paper tablecloths and mismatched centerpieces made by someone's kid. A volunteer handed me a name tag and a cup of cider without asking why I was there. No questions, just warmth. We found seats together. Ruth introduced me to people like I belonged. Mateo made a joke about how the mashed potatoes were a spiritual experience. Ren showed me their sketchbook and let me flip through pages of characters and stories and worlds. At one point, a woman at our table asked casually, "So what brings you here for the holiday?" I felt the old panic rise, my family's reflex living in my body. Say something acceptable. Say something that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. Say you're fine. But Ruth touched my arm lightly under the table, not controlling, not rescuing, just a steady reminder. You can choose how much to share. So I said the truth, but in my own way. I needed a different kind of holiday this year, I said. The woman nodded like that made perfect sense. Good for you, she said. And then she asked if I wanted more gravy. That was it. No interrogation, no judgment, no demand for a confession. Just gravy. Later, when someone started playing guitar and people sang softly, nothing polished, just community noise, I sat back in my chair and watched the room. I watched strangers pass plates like it mattered that you ate. I watched people laugh without checking who deserved it. I watched a teenage boy help an elderly man carry a tray. No drama, no applause. And something in me, something I'd kept armored for years, shifted. Because I realized acceptance wasn't supposed to feel like a test. It was supposed to feel like this. Easy, human, ordinary. On the walk back to the hotel, Ruth walked beside me, her scarf fluttering. You okay? She asked. I looked up at the gray sky, at the soft lights, at the wet pavement reflecting everything like a mirror. I am, I said, surprised by how true it was. I didn't think I would be, but I am. Ruth smiled. Good, she said. Remember this feeling. I nodded, even though my eyes stung, because I already knew the danger. This warmth was going to make my family's coldness harder to tolerate. Once you learn what kindness feels like, you can't pretend crumbs are a feast. Back in my hotel room, I hung my coat up and sat on the bed. My phone was still face down on the nightstand. I turned it over. No new messages. Not from my dad, not from Kaylee. Just silence. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like proof. Proof that I could step away and the world would keep spinning. Proof that my absence didn't break anything, because the only thing holding that family system together had always been my willingness to be the cushion. I opened my notes app and typed 3 words, not as a dramatic vow, just as a quiet reminder. Chosen family counts. Then I set my phone down again and let myself breathe. Because in a city where no one knew my role, I got to be something else. Not the extra daughter, not the backup. Just Megan. A person at a table. A person worth warmth. And that was where everything started to change. I got back from Portland 2 days after the holiday with rain still clinging to my coat and that strange new calm in my chest, the kind that doesn't come from things getting better, but from you finally stopping the thing that keeps hurting you. My apartment felt smaller than I remembered. Not in a sad way, in a clear way. On purpose, like I was telling my body, on purpose, like I was telling my body, we're safe, we're here. Then I checked my mail, mostly junk. A grocery store flyer, a coupon for oil changes, a credit card offer with my name spelled wrong, and one thick envelope that didn't match anything else. Cream paper, my full legal name typed neatly. A return address from an office building downtown I'd never been to. The kind of envelope that didn't arrive by accident. I stood in the hallway with my keys still in my hand and stared at it until my heartbeat started to change. Faster, sharper, like my body recognized trouble before my mind caught up. I carried it inside like it might explode if I opened it too fast. At my kitchen table, I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out the contents. A letter on heavy letterhead. Halloran and Price, Estate and Trust Administration. My eyes skimmed the first line, then doubled back because my brain refused to believe what it was reading. Ms. Megan Brooks, we are writing regarding the estate of Eleanor Brooks. Eleanor Brooks. My grandmother. My dad's mom. The woman who smelled like lavender and always kept peppermints in her purse. The woman who used to call me Meggie when my mom wasn't around. The woman my mother tolerated like a chore and Kaylee treated like a vending machine for compliments. My hands went cold. I hadn't heard her name in years. I didn't even know if she was alive. The next line hit like a slap. We regret to inform you that Ms. Brooks passed away on October 18th, 2025. October. 2 months ago. My mouth went dry. My throat tightened. I read it again, slower, as if the date might change if I stared hard enough. October 18th, 2025. She'd been gone for weeks, and no one had told me. Not my dad, not my mom, not even a group text announcement where my name wasn't included but I might have found out by accident. Nothing. Just silence. Like my family had quietly erased an entire death from my life. I blinked hard. I told myself not to spiral. Not yet. I forced myself to keep reading. Per Miss Brooks's last will and testament dated March 4th, 2019, you are named as a beneficiary. Beneficiary. That word didn't belong to me. It belonged to other people. The kind of people who had families that didn't treat them like background noise. I kept going. Specifically, you are named as the sole beneficiary of a separate educational and housing trust established in your name. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up. A trust. In my name. I read the sentence twice, then a third time, because it didn't make sense with the life I'd lived. It didn't match the story my mother told about me being selfish and ungrateful and always making things hard. It didn't match the way Kaylee was always the one protected. My fingers trembled against the paper. The letter continued, polite and clinical, like it had no idea it was detonating my understanding of my whole family. We were retained by the executor of the estate, Mrs. Denise Brooks, to finalize distribution of assets and fulfill notification requirements. However, recent discrepancies in the file have prompted a formal review. As a named beneficiary, you are entitled to receive copies of relevant documents upon request. Denise Brooks. My mother. My mother had been the executor. My mother had known. I felt my pulse in my ears. The letter listed a phone number, an appointment time, a request for me to call the office within 10 business days. 10 business days. As if this were normal. As if my grandmother dying in October and my mother never telling me was a minor scheduling inconvenience. I set the letter down and stared at my kitchen wall. I thought about all the holidays I'd spent alone. All the times my mom said, "Kaylee doesn't want any stress." All the years I assumed I'd been cut off emotionally, and that was the whole story. But this was different. This was structural, legal, paper trail different. I reached for my phone without thinking and scrolled to my dad's number. Then I stopped. I held my thumb over his name and felt the old reflex rise. Call him, ask him, plead for an explanation. Let him soothe you with excuses that make nothing change. Then I remembered Ruth's scarf fluttering in the mist, Mateo's easy laughter, Wren offering cornbread like the world wasn't a locked door. And I put my phone down. No begging. Not this time. I called the attorney's office instead. A receptionist with a smooth voice transferred me to a paralegal named Andrea, who sounded tired in the way competent people sound when they've seen too many families behave badly. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "thank you for calling back. We've been trying to reach you." "By mail," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were still shaking. No one in my family told me my grandmother died. There was a pause, not surprise exactly, more like recognition. "I'm sorry," Andrea said. "That's, unfortunately, not uncommon." "I have questions," I said. "I imagine you do." Papers rustled on her end. "First, I want to confirm, you did not receive any prior notice from the executor, Mrs. Denise Brooks?" "No." "And you did not sign any document declining your interest in the trust?" My stomach clenched. "No. I didn't even know it existed." Another pause, heavier. "Okay," Andrea said carefully. "Then I'm going to be direct. Part of the reason we sent the letter is because the file contains a signed statement dated November 2nd, 2025, claiming you wish to be removed from all distributions and did not want to be contacted." I went very still. "You have severed all ties, and that you have severed all ties, and that contact would cause you distress." My skin went cold. My mind grabbed at the date. November 2nd. That was weeks after my grandmother died. Weeks after my mother called and told me not to come for the holiday. Weeks after I'd been cut out of peace. "And that statement," I said slowly, forcing the words through my teeth. "Who signed it?" Andrea hesitated. Then she said, "It appears to be signed as Megan Brooks." My vision tunneled. For a second, the room tilted, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat. "That's not possible," I said, but my voice sounded distant, like it was coming from somewhere behind me. "I didn't sign anything." "I understand," Andrea replied, "and that's why it's being reviewed. There are inconsistencies. The signature does not match other verified documents we have on file." My hands started shaking again, harder this time. "Who submitted it?" I asked. "It was included in a packet delivered by the executor," Andrea said. "And..." She stopped, like she was choosing her words. "There's also an email chain where your sister, Ms. Kaylee Brooks, referenced Megan's decision and urged the executor to keep things simple." My mouth went dry. Kaylee. My sister's name hit like a door slamming. Andrea continued, "We can't make accusations over the phone. But we can tell you this. Our office has an obligation to ensure distributions follow the will and trust instruments as written. If a beneficiary did not knowingly waive their interest, We have to correct course. I stared at the letter on my table. The crisp edges, the clean black ink, the way it made everything feel real in a way my mother's voice never did. So my mom knew, I said, more to myself than to Andrea. She knew my grandmother died. She knew there was a trust. And someone, I swallowed, tasting metal. Someone tried to remove me. Andrea's voice softened. Ms. Brooks, do you want to schedule an appointment to come in? We can provide copies of documents and discuss your options. Yes. But another word rose first. Why? I asked. Why would she do that? Why would my mother? Andrea didn't answer the why. People like her never do. The why belongs to the family, not the paperwork. I can schedule you for Thursday at 10:30, she said. You can bring identification. If you'd like, you can also bring independent counsel. Independent counsel. A polite way of saying, don't walk into this alone. Thursday, I repeated, grounding myself in the date. I'll be there. When I hung up, the room felt too quiet. I sat at the table with my hands folded in front of me, like I was trying to keep myself from splintering. My grandmother died in October. My mother didn't tell me. A trust existed in my name, and someone tried to erase me from it. I could feel the old story trying to reassert itself, the one where Kaylee was favored because she needed more, and I was neglected because I was strong. The one where my mother was just overwhelmed and doing her best. The one where my dad was passive but harmless. But this wasn't neglect. This was action. This was someone printing a document, creating a narrative, moving money, moving power, making sure I stayed in my role. The extra daughter, the one you didn't have to consult, the one you could replace with a forged signature and a tidy explanation. I thought about every time my mom told me, "Don't make it about you." And I finally understood what she really meant. Don't make it visible. Don't make it traceable. Don't make it something anyone outside this family can see. Because inside the family, they could call me dramatic and be done with it. But paper doesn't care who's dramatic. Paper cares who signed. I opened my laptop and searched for estate attorney near me. My hands were steady now. Cold, but steady. I made 3 calls, left 2 messages, booked a consultation with the 3rd. Then, because some part of me needed proof in my own hands, I pulled up old photos on my phone. Holidays, birthdays. My grandmother smiling behind Kaylee like Kaylee was the whole point. My grandmother's eyes on me in the corner of one picture, soft and sad and maybe, more aware than I'd ever let myself believe. You keep going, Meggie. Don't wait for... You keep going, Meggie. Don't wait for permission. I'd assumed it was just grandma talk. Now it sounded like a warning. On Thursday morning, before I left for the law office, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "Are you okay? You've been quiet." I stared at it. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I should have told you." Not, "We need to talk about Mom." Just, "Are you okay?" As if my silence was the problem, not her choices. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a fresh email draft and typed a single sentence to my mother, saved it, and didn't send it yet. I'm aware of Grandma Eleanor's passing and the estate proceedings. Please direct all communication regarding this matter to my legal counsel once retained. That was it. No motion, no pleading, no argument she could twist into stress. Structure, boundaries, paper. I put on my coat, grabbed the letter from Halloran and Price, and walked out of my apartment like I was walking into the rest of my life. And as the elevator doors closed, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Heavy, yes, but solid. For years, I thought Kaylee was the favorite because my mom loved her more. Now I understood the darker truth. Kaylee wasn't protected by accident. She was protected by design. And if Kaylee had been manipulating the story for years, if my mother let her, helped her, covered for her, then it didn't matter what I said or how gently I said it. My role had never been negotiable. Until I stopped playing it. I wasn't the backup. I wasn't the extra. I wasn't the girl who showed up with cornbread hoping love would finally stick. I was a named beneficiary on a legal document my family tried to bury. And the truth had found me anyway. Truth doesn't expire. It waits. And then it shows up on your kitchen table in a thick cream envelope with your full name printed neatly on the front, like the universe finally decided you deserved a receipt.